In this video, we're going to go over some of the biggest Mario censorships of all time, from drastic regional differences to complete game recalls and some pretty controversial topics. Before we begin, since only a small portion of people who watch my videos are actually subscribed, if you're new here, consider subscribing as it's free and it helps out a ton, and if you don't, you may never see my videos again. Kinda like how Nintendo never wants you to see this video again. This is the home of a Rougeport resident in Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door. He may look the same as most of the other bandit characters in the games until you notice that the house is a literal murder scene. There's blood on the floor and a chalk outline of a toad's body, implying that one, met their end here, to put it lightly. Why aren't more people talking about this kind of content in a Mario game? A Mario game which, by the way, received an E for everyone rating by the ESRB. Is this just supposed to be considered normal and fit for the whole family? Well, not exactly, since this, as you may expect, was only in the Japanese version of the Thousand Year Door. In all other versions, this scene is censored and the extra details aren't present anymore, so the murder of a toad isn't implied. The bandit's still portrayed as a bad dude and all, but originally his character was going to be a lot deeper than it turned out to be. And this is sort of going to be a theme with a lot of the censorship that we'll see today. A detail is changed to fit a lower age rating, but by doing so it unfortunately peels away at the details of these characters, quite literally making them paper thin. Vivian is one of the most infamous examples of characters like this in the series. Making her first appearance in the same game, you'd think that there's not too much controversial on the surface, but this instance isn't quite as in-your-face as the murder scene example was. Vivian used to work for a villainous organization alongside her sisters, but when she leaves them and joins up with Mario and the crew, her sisters begin to mock her. In the English localization of the game, Vivian is portrayed as a cisgender female and is mocked for her appearance, with them calling her ugly and all that, but in all other versions she's revealed to have been born a male but has made a transgender transition into living as a female and is instead mocked for that by her sisters. Yeah. And Nintendo wasn't comfortable with that type of material and insults coming for the English version, so it had to be censored. Their motive may have been to avoid members of the transgender community being offended by the insults in the game, but that may not be the case, since at least nowadays many in the community see Vivian as an inspirational character because of how she overcomes this abuse. It was likely that Nintendo never even wanted to go near the gender identity area in this game, considering that times were quite a bit different in 2004 than they are today. But regardless of the intention, I feel it's still hurting the character by decreasing the amount of depth that she has. And while some censorship like this were done for more serious reasons, some were pretty funny in their origin, like the female boos that worked for the Pianta Syndicate in the Thousand Year Door. In the Japanese original, these boos originally resembled Playboy bunnies with the bunny ears and all that, but they would be changed internationally to have cat ears instead. This one is just lame to me. The Pianta Parlor is a casino which on its own is a more mature area by Mario standards, and having a more mature reference in the boos that inhabit it would only make sense, but I guess Nintendo just didn't want to have any possible association with this overseas, even though it's not even directly referenced and the casual player may just miss it entirely. But at least this casino is still present in all versions, as another 2004 Mario game wasn't as lucky in that regard. In the Korean version of Mario 64 DS, the minigame mode would be completely taken out due to some of the games taking place inside Luigi's casino, which I think is just insane. As a kid, I loved playing these minigames as a fun aside to the main adventure, so it sucks to hear that not everyone had a chance to experience them. Yeah, teaching kids to gamble I think is something that should be approached with caution in games, but I highly doubt that many players would have become real-life addicts off of something so lighthearted as playing Memory Match with Luigi. But this whole no casinos in kids games thing wouldn't just stay with Korea for long. They seemed to hop on the anti-gambling trend a few years before the ESRB did, as they began taking the game corners out of the Pokemon titles around 2009 or so, with pretty much all other regions following suit for E-rated games. So not a real surprise that at least one ratings board had an issue with it at the time. Kinda odd how they removed the whole mode rather than just the Luigi games though. I don't really see any problem with a game like Wanted, for example, but something I really would have wanted to see is the marketing meeting behind Super Mario Strikers, because whoever thought that this was a good idea for a promotional image deserves a medal or something. This one is just funny and a great marketing strategy by Nintendo in my opinion, which actually made sense considering the more mature nature and tone for the game, but it was eventually pulled, likely to disassociate Mario from possibly being perceived as non-child friendly. Again, even though that's sorta what they were trying to evoke with the whole game, but can't argue with Nintendo logic, right? A much more major form of marketing will be censored for different reasons though, this involving Super Mario Odyssey. One of, if not the biggest pieces of marketing for a game is its cover. It all boils down to that kid in the store looking at the games and picking the one that they like most or generally stands out, so it would make sense to ensure that your game's cover is well designed, Or maybe not in some cases. But Mario Odyssey's cover, despite looking nice to many, went through one revision which is infamous for removing Sombrero Mario from it and replacing that section with an underwater image from the game. This probably would have been a small blip in history had there been multiple revisions made to the cover with no controversy behind them, with simply the overall look of the box art being the sole priority. However, this was not the case here. While there wasn't any major backlash to the idea of Mario wearing a sombrero at the time, it seems as if Nintendo was afraid that if there was any sudden urge to cancel Mario Odyssey or something like that, they'd have almost all their bases covered by not having this being present on the box art. This way, anyone who would have had a problem with it had to have played the game first, since they left it in the final release. I honestly don't know why there would have been a problem with Mario wearing a sombrero though. He wears a bunch of different outfits on this travel throughout the world. Why not this too? Because it's a cultural item? And this golf cap and outfit isn't? Kinda sad that this measure even had to happen, but at least this costume remained in the actual game. There's one which had to be modified for the Chinese release, being the pirate outfit. For this version, the skull and eye patch would be removed, and the pirate outfit and hat items were renamed to Noble Outfit and Noble Hat, respectively. I find this one very interesting though, because through the research I've done, I can't find anything concrete about pirates specifically that China bans or views differently. But I have found that there are many concepts that the Chinese media finds disturbing and unsettling that most other nations wouldn't react similarly to. Things like the undead and ghostly figures are common in this way, and my best guess as to why this would have been censored would likely be the implication that Mario only has one eye, and that may not be appropriate over there for a kid's game. I really don't have a concrete answer, but it might be something as simple as that. But this is nowhere near the biggest Chinese Mario censorship to me, as in the standard versions of Paper Mario the Origami King, a trapped toad complains that they've been poorly treated. Through this, the toad says, quote, "What do they have against toads? It's not fair, toads have rights, this is toad abuse." But in the Chinese versions, the quotes about rights and freedom were removed and replaced with "return the smooth appearance to the toads, give the easy life back to the toads." This one's pretty crazy. What are they implying by this? Do they not want this type of speech to be seen? Is it really that dark? Some have theorized that Nintendo made these changes because of the Hong Kong national security situation, which it may be related to, I'm not entirely sure. I've also heard that the words that they use to replace the peace and freedom lines have a character in them which could also be interpreted as flat, so it might be a pun of some kind because, you know, they're made out of paper. But I'm not gonna pretend like I know enough about the language to confirm that or anything. Whatever the intention though, this one is quite interesting. The situation may not be as grim as one would initially be led to believe, but you can't help but wonder, right? In Mario Kart 7's Chinese version, something interesting occurs in the online mode. When you're matched up with players in a lobby, normally you'll see the emblem of their home country beside them to get an idea of where everyone's from and all that. It's a nice addition. But if someone from Taiwan ends up in your lobby, their flag will not be displayed in this version. This has to do with the controversy surrounding Taiwan's desire to be a separate entity from mainland China, and since the ROC doesn't recognize that to be the case, they're sort of erasing any reference to that possibility from the game. I'll be the first one to admit that I'm no expert on the subject, and I'm sure it goes a lot deeper than that, but the gist of the situation as it relates to Mario is that if you play this game in mainland China, the flag of anyone from Taiwan will be censored. One of the most infamous Mario Kart censorships is Inkling Girl giving what could be interpreted as an up yours gesture when tricking in the game. I find this pretty funny as it may have been intentional, since the degree to which people find something like this offensive is nowhere near the other topics that we've covered, and especially not as much as some that we've got coming up, but it still had to be censored anyways. When I covered this in a previous video, I found it especially interesting, and still do, that this wasn't the first time that Nintendo included a gesture like this in a Mario game. In Super Mario RPG, Bowser's victory celebration in Japan involved him giving this gesture, whereas for all other regions it would be removed. Which makes you wonder why Nintendo never learned their lesson with this. I mean, if something had to be censored over 20 years ago, it's certainly not going to be passed now. But they may not have been aware of this case since Square was involved in Super Mario RPG's development. Another instance of a victory celebration being censored in an SNES Mario game occurred with Bowser and Peach in Super Mario Kart. In this game, they both have animations which feature them drinking alcohol in the Japanese version, but it would be altered in all other versions where they simply pop open the bottle without drinking out of it. With the way Peach's face turns red implying her being drunk and all that, they likely didn't want to go too far with alcohol in a game which many children will be playing, although since they still have the bottle present, the implication of a victory drink could still be made. I guess it's not as obviously booze this way, but still interesting that it was left in. A much more obvious instance of alcohol being used is in the original version of Wario Land 2. I guess technically a Mario game? Let's just roll with it. In this, there are some penguin enemies which throw mugs of beer at Wario, which cause him to get drunk immediately and go into this crazed looking state. But in later versions of the title, the term Drunk Wario would be changed to Crazy Wario, and the beer mugs were taken out and replaced with these iron ball objects instead. They probably just didn't want to reference beer in a game like this internationally, although I do find it funny that this was an attack concept, very unique to say the least. Even some more obscure Mario games have alcohol censorship like Mario's Picross, where in the Japanese version, many puzzles feature alcohol in them, which would be removed in later versions of the game. An odd idea for an object in Picross in my opinion, but hey, I guess you need a wide variety and maybe that's all they could come up with that was recognizable for the small Game Boy screen. The Japanese version of Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door featured actual wine in the game, which would be replaced with Chocola Cola in other versions. Similar reasonings to the previous instances of the international ratings boards clearly having a different view of alcohol in games which kids could be playing. But this next censorship in the Thousand Year Door, I don't think Nintendo would have wanted anyone to see, regardless of the age rating. Well, at least in Europe. Mario doesn't raise his hand when greeting an NPC in the European version, since this resembles a certain notable hand gesture as well with extremely negative historical connections. Yeah, it's obviously not referencing this and is likely just a salute of sorts when talking to characters, but from a glance, one can understand why they would want to avoid any risk at all of it being taken out of context in that way. I know this is a Mario video and all that, but this bears a striking resemblance to the censorship of Registeel in the Gen 4 Pokemon games, where for some reason a similar gesture was used in his sprite's pose. As if we didn't have enough censorship from the Thousand Year Door in this video, we also have the name of Red Bones, who in Japan is called the Bloody Dull Bones instead. Understandable why this name was changed, but it's good to know why they're red, I guess. Going back to the more obscure games, for one of the most major censorships today being in Dr. Mario 64, where the character Octo would be recolored from the Japanese original of black to orange. This was likely due to fear of him resembling blackface and avoiding any potential racial sensitivity issues. It shows by doing this that this likely wasn't the intention at all, but just to be safe, the change was made. Once again, the Pokemon comparison could be made to Jinx, who wasn't said to be based on that either, yet the accusations still came through, but in both cases the character would be changed. The Japanese version of Mario Kart Super Circuit had a similar instance of cultural issues that had to be censored. In the original, there were Shy Guys that resembled stereotypical versions of Native Americans, which would be taken out internationally. We've seen many situations like this, and while some may liken it to the Sombrero Mario situation from earlier, I highly disagree. Here the Shy Guys are portrayed as enemies and are shown attacking the driver in an aggressive way, while Mario is simply wearing a hat in Odyssey. One is a negative connotation while the other is absolutely not. Were either overly egregious to censor? I'll leave that up to you, but either way, they stayed on the path of caution in the overseas release of this game whilst not affecting gameplay, so I don't see it as that big of a deal. Another Mario Kart censorship came in the Nintendo 64 version, where for some reason in the Japanese original, there were ads on the side of the track closely referencing real-life tobacco companies, and this would be changed to generic-looking ads internationally. It's an interesting thought though of Nintendo seemingly wanting to have these homages back then, and maybe they wanted to sell advertising, but it didn't work out, and who knows. It seemed really out of place here though. In WarioWare DIY for the DS, there's plenty of regional differences from the Japanese version as there is with almost every Mario game out there, but one in particular can definitely be noted as an instance of censorship. The breakdown minigame would be changed pretty significantly. While outside of Japan, the letters DIY are spelt out by the poses. For Japan, that would have to be different since they would have to abbreviate made in OR for that version. If it was just for this though, I definitely wouldn't have included it. It's the fact that the Japanese original had a different thought process to the character design. Nintendo internationally didn't seem to like this and stuck with a consistent theme in the newer release for all three images. Wario doesn't seem to stop with the censorship though, as in the first Mario Party he would sometimes say "oh my god" when losing a minigame, but that was only in the Japanese version and it would be changed since internationally religious connotations tend to be controversial regardless of the context. In the sequel, a Toad is just seen casually smoking while he's doing the calculations in the Japanese version, which would be taken out for all others. I find it funny that they pay attention to so many random details like these which were considered inappropriate for a younger audience, but this isn't even the biggest censorship in Mario Party 2. The Japanese version of the game contains a gunfight which characters can have against Bowser where they use real guns with actual bullets, which wasn't going to fly internationally, where they still have the guns but they look more unrealistic and fire corks instead of bullets. Nowadays though, I doubt even the censored version would get through considering the weapons are still there, but even back then it's interesting to see that a change had to be made. At least none of these Mario Party censorships resulted in the game having to be completely pulled off the shelves or anything like that. That would be completely extreme and never be forced to happen, right? Well, that was the case until Mario Party 8. This game would have to be recalled in the UK for the use of an offensive word in the region. This was likely just a misunderstanding since, and this is just me personally talking here, but until I found out about this censorship, I never knew it was offensive either. It literally just refers to muscle spasms over here, so it could have been a case of the localization team missing something which the original English translation would have never found an issue with. But while we've touched on some big subjects today, some serious, some funny, there is no character more well known for their censorship in Mario history than Birdo. Where to start with this guy? Or girl? Or, it? Well, I guess that on its own sums it all up. In Super Mario Bros. 2, the Doki Doki Panic one, Birdo debuted as a boss where in the manual for the game it literally says he thinks he's a girl and he spits eggs from his mouth. he'd rather be called Birdetta. So a biological male then? Is Birdo transgender? Should we say she or he? Well, if you check in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, the pronoun it is used, so is that right? Maybe these descriptions aren't the most accurate pieces of information to go off of, as even in the 20 plus years between these, they still never found a concrete solution. This is because Nintendo of America modernly refers to Birdo as a female. In the Women of Racing Organization banner in Mario Kart 8, Birdo is shown alongside Peach and Daisy. In the Mario Golf Toadstool Tour manual, every female character has a pink dot behind them, and indeed, Birdo does. One of the biggest pointers to a female Birdo to me occurs in Mario Super Sluggers, as Peach's Heart Swing special, which stuns male characters and characters of unknown gender, does not stun female characters, which includes Birdo. But this game never released in Europe, and over there things are quite a bit different, as Birdo is referred to with masculine pronouns in the British localizations of Mario Tennis Aces and Super Mario Party. With all these regional changes being made, with one source saying that she's female and that being censored and vice versa, it's easy to say that Birdo is without a doubt one of the most frequently censored Mario characters ever. A Serenade and Paper Mario Sticker Star I feel sums it up the best. Heart of a woman, heart of a man, both can know love's grace. Even Nintendo is making fun of the inconsistencies at this point. Maybe one day we'll truly have an answer. I'll see you soon with another video, and if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe.